Namaste, everyone, and welcome to the American Center and our first coffee chat series. How's everybody doing over there? Doing good? Thanks for coming, and good to see a lot of familiar faces, and thanks to all of our friends from the American Chamber of Commerce in Nepal, from Nusan, and from all of our exchange programs. Great to see a lot of friends in the audience. My name is Mike Harker, and I'm the Public Affairs Chief here at the American Embassy in Nepal. And it is my great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Mr. Prasanna Dhungel. He is co-founder and managing partner of GrowByData, which is a Boston-based company that helps top brands and agencies improve their online sales by providing insights into search trends, pricing, competitors, and the overall digital marketplace. He has 20 years of experience building global data businesses and advising organizations, including the Gates Foundation, Athena Health, and private equity firms. Originally from Kathmandu, he holds degrees from Cornell, Princeton, and Kellogg, and is currently based in Boston. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause to Mr. Dhungel.
Thank you so much, Mike.
How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be able to share my experience today on this lovely afternoon.
I like the energy already. So tell us, what brings you back here to Kathmandu for this trip?
Sure. So I run GrowByData, which is a market intelligence firm that supports large brands and agencies, specifically that are operating in search, and more so these days in AI LLM. We started our office here 11 years ago, and we have a large operation here. So I come to Kathmandu for two reasons. One, there's a lot of things going on in the office. Our industry is rapidly changing. We're under constant competitive threats and opportunities. And so being able to share that with our team members is instrumental to me. And secondly, my family is here. So being able to be here and just walk around Kathmandu is energizing to me.
Great to have you here then. And so before we go into your current role at GrowByData, can you just share a little bit about your educational background, life here in Kathmandu, growing up, life in Nepal, and what led you to the United States?
Sure. So I think I learned about the US education system from my Jesuit fathers at St. Xavier's Godavari many years ago. So they were fathers who, some of them were from the Midwest. And so I learned the importance of education and making sure that you have good grammar and so on. This was when I was very young. And then I studied there and went to Botanical School. And I applied to various colleges, went to Cornell for my undergrad. And it was a transformational experience to be able to walk through these walls, get an F1 visa, go to the US with an I-20 visa, and I would say experience the beauty of liberal arts education. I will emphasize that, which is I went in there knowing I wanted to be an engineer, but I didn't know what. But I benefited from the liberal arts education, and I would say also the benevolence of the US economy, because I was able to go there on a scholarship. And from there, I worked hard, and I wanted to get a PhD back then, really in telecom. So I applied to top schools, and I went to Princeton for my grad school. And my roots, I was able to be exposed to phenomenal people. I was able to hear a talk by Jeff Bezos, when he was not as well known. I was able to hear a talk by Peter Thiel, who is another phenomenal entrepreneur, and many others. And I would say I was able to get the seeds of entrepreneurship planted at Princeton. It taught me how to aspire, work hard, and continue to push yourself and achieve anything. From there, I didn't really get a PhD. I knew I loved applying technology to solve problems. I think I was more like an applied technologist. So I finished my master's and I said, I'm going to work for a few years and get an MBA. And I worked for a telecom company that blew about $100 million and went nowhere. So that was an experience. And then after that, this was the early days of tech here, and I was able to work in a company called D2 Hawkeye, which probably had about 3 people here when I worked here, and I was able to see the company do very well by having a Boston and Kathmandu presence. So I was with the firm for many years, and I knew I wanted to do more in tech, and so I went to business school at Northwestern in Chicago, to Kellogg, and again, that was another transformational experience. To be able to be educated by one of the founders of Groupon. He was my professor. And so this was the early days, and then have attend talks by people like Sam Zales, who is like a real estate mogul, and many others. Was, I would say, a transformational experience. And then from there, I consulted for a few years. I saw like the emergence of big data back then. It was not AI, really. It was big data back then. There was a thesis I had, and we started GrowByData in 2014 to bring big data to SMEs. That was the genesis of GrowByData. And over time, we continued to build our product. And today, we luckily serve some of the largest brands in the world. And we're able to help them dominate and beat large competitors that are operating on Google and LLM. And so today, after 30 years, to be able to come back to the US Embassy and share my experience is almost like coming back full circle. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share my experience and hopefully be helpful.
That's incredible. Definitely full circle. So you would have had no idea back then that you would be back at the American Embassy, speaking to perhaps the younger version of yourself right now in this audience, right?
I had no clue. When I went to the US, I had no clue what kind of engineering it was like many times you don't know, you just keep working hard and you surround yourself with good people and good things happen. So you're right, I didn't know.
So looking back in the 30 years or so, like with your education and professionally, when did like a mental model kind of start coalescing and guide you towards where you are right now? When did you actually get a clearer vision of, okay, this is where I'm going and these are the steps I need to take, rather than taking opportunities as they came? When did it become a little more intentional?
Yeah, so when I was at Princeton, I knew that I loved entrepreneurship. I knew that was the thing I loved to do, and that was the way I could make an impact. But there was a lot I needed to do. But when I was at Kellogg, especially when I was at business school, a lot of my foundation was formed. And the why was I was able to get the 101s on building a business, and I was able to meet amazing people. And what I was able to see is my classmates and alumni were able to build global empires. But it was really like after business school, when I was consulting and advising various firms, that I saw the data business model broken. I developed a thesis on how it could be fixed. And every company I went to, it was broken. So I said, I knew how to solve this. And when I tried to solve it within a company, I had a lot of friction. And so I said, okay, I know we have to change this. And the only way I can do this is by starting my own company. And so it was really post-Kellogg, when I was out in the real world, working, bearing friction, trying to make change, that my point of view on how change should happen really emerged.
And so when you were consulting for these companies and you're saying that their models were broken, what were some of the common characteristics that you saw as part of their broken models? Sure.
So one, and I'll touch on a few technical topics. This was the early days of cloud. So back then, today.
So this is like early 2000s-ish?
This was like early 2010-ish.
Okay.
So when Amazon became successful and AWS was starting to take off, what I was finding is companies would buy lots and lots of servers. And it was a long process. And on the one hand, clients wanted information now, and it would take 3 months, 6 months, with tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, to be able to get materials to be able to solve their problems. And there was a lot of barrier to making changes at companies because, like, I don't like cloud. There's a lot of risk and so on and so forth. And then on the other hand, there was like AWS and Jeff Bezos that was pushing, and I knew how that would democratize. And so that was one thing that really I was able to see. And then the other thing I was seeing is there's a way that, it's like very messy. It was the early days of data. Your data was in your laptop, sometimes in your hard drive, sometimes in a machine. It crashed, and my God, like on a summer day, July 4th, the server crashed, and I would be working over the July 4th holidays. It sucked, to say the least. And I knew there was a better way. And so some of these experiences really was internally, whereas on the other hand, I knew that business owners were struggling. This was right after the 2008 crash. There was almost like a somewhat of a tough economic times. Budget was tight. Businesses wanted change, and change wasn't happening. There was a solution. So I think it was a bunch of these things that came together.
Gotcha. And so that propelled you towards, I got to be my own boss, starting GrowByData. Can you talk about just the journey of developing that business, not just from like the services it offered, but also just as a leader on developing the right kind of team as well?
Sure. So I started this with my co-founder, Scott Smigler, who I worked with a few years before that. And he was really in the e-commerce space. And rather than going broad, we said, let's start this to serve e-commerce, SMEs. So it was much more narrow. Because one of my experiences, don't go broad. If you try to solve everything, you'll solve nothing. And so I know even back then we were broad, but that's where we started. And then what we started to do is there were a certain number of clients that Scott introduced us to, and they had a certain problem. One was a company that was in the aircraft part space. And so if you are an aircraft advocate, or if you are flying these small aircrafts around the US, it was almost like changing your own oil for your car. You were changing things for your aircraft. So that was one client. And then also, we worked with an agency that Scott ran. And so we said, okay, let's start with offering by adding value. We were serving all kinds of services back then. But what we knew from day one was we wanted to build a product business. That's what I wanted to do, or so. Because building a product business is hard, but it's scalable. It's a very sustainable business model. And so our model, even today, is we try to really serve the heck out of customers. I am customer obsessed, I like to say. I don't care, if I build the world's best software. If our customers don't like it, what the heck? So we try to be very customer obsessed. We try to listen to our customers, and we try to be very entrepreneurial. And so it could be whether we're building our business or even building our business here or in the US. And so as we started that, we started to build our operation here. And to come back to your question, I hired Subin Srestha, who's here in the room, to be our VP of operations. And together, we've been able to build a business. And I like to say I hired probably a bunch of mavericks. Those that were willing to really be bold, but could be somewhat rookies, but it's okay. And I thought, I want to hire people with the right attitude versus those with the right skills. And even back then, people weren't really willing to work with me. So fine, it's okay. So we just assembled those that were committed, that was interested. And that's how we started to grow. And slowly we started to build our operation. We started to, I would say, specialize. We started to create various departments. And on that, I leveraged a lot of my previous experience. And even today, as we go to market and grow, we continue to experiment. We continue to push ourselves. It's messy out there, but it's okay. That's fun. That's what we've done.
So for the audience understanding, how is GrowByData like structured between the US and Nepal? Or is there any specific division between those two offices?
Right. So we started with a lot of our operations here to build our product. But today, our sales, marketing, product, operations, and even finance, almost all of the departments have a counterpart in the US. And so our sales leader is based in Boston, and then he's supported by the sales support team here. The marketing leader is based in Boston. She's supported by the marketing team here. The product lead is in Boston. So that's what we've done. And so, and why it's important is I think it's important to have proximity to the market. One of the things I have a lot of difficulty is how do you have your team members empathize with customers? The market is changing so fast. We are under intense competitive pressure. And how do you bring that sense to the team members here? I myself haven't been able to perfect it. I try, but it's also on my team members there to really bring that. So that's what we've done, which is we build our operations there, we build our go-to-market team there, we build our advisors, and we're supported by our team here.
And so if you check out their website, they have an incredible Rolodex of really high-profile, big-name clients, a lot of big American brands, for example. Do you want to just share a few of those names and maybe some case studies from them and what GrowByData has been able to offer to these companies? Sure.
So I'm proud, I should say, to be able to serve some of the biggest brands in the world and in the US. And that's another way that I feel happy about my work. And to answer your question, we work with really large ad agencies. Dentsu, iProspect, Merkle. This is one of the top 5 agencies in the world. Through them, we are able to serve massive brands like Nordstrom, American Express, Discover, Cleveland Clinic, UPMC, AutoZone, and so on. We also serve Amazon. We serve other brands out there. So it's I would say our target and those we serve are Fortune 500 brands. And those, for us, it's those that have a dominant share on Google. And we serve the leaders at these firms. Anyone who's a VP and director of demand generation, growth, they're overwhelmed with data. They're under intense competitive pressure. The board and the market is putting a lot of pressure on them. The stock market will crush them if they're not on their edge. And we try to be their partner and really help them.
Can you walk us through an example? So say I'm Amazon, I hire GrowByData. What are you helping do for me in a quarter, for example?
Sure. So one of the things we do is we like to price shop. So when you, Mike, you and I are shopping, we go in there and it might be $1,000 watch. We might naturally just go in and see if we can get a better deal. And so being able to be competitively priced is a key attribute that large brands offer. One of the things we do is we provide competitive price intelligence. So if you're selling the same product or similar products, prices are changing all the time. And so we help them gain a pulse of competitor prices and their strategies so that they can be on top. That's one clear example. I'll give you another example. We work with a very large education company. They're based all over the US. It's a well-known brand. And folks go to them to get trained online. They started an office in London. And then in December, the way they get business is through leads. You search on Google, like I'll give you an example. Let's say I want to learn AI training center, and you have all these ads and things coming. And that's the way they got business. And one fine December month, suddenly their leads dried up. And they were like, gee, should we shut off our London business? That was the kind of decision that their board was pressuring them. What we uncovered is they had certain problems with their Google programs. Google changed a lot. Their competitors took their market share and they made some mistakes and they had no insight about that. So we were able to uncover problems that they had. They fixed it and they're back in business. That's another example. Another large US brand was looking at expanding. It's a pharma company. They were looking at expanding their diabetes drug to Canada. And so the question was, you're spending like $1 billion to enter Canada. How should you enter? Do you go direct? Do you go through resellers? What should your pricing strategy be? How should you package it? And so on and so forth. We work with a large shoe company. They were looking at the German market. It's a shoe company that we all know of. And so they were looking at, I want to sell sandals in Germany. Okay, how do I sell? Who are my competitors? Is Amazon strong there? What's the style there? Should we go through Amazon? Should we go through someone else? All these types of strategy type questions we're able to answer. So at the highest level, what we help brands with is we help them expand to new markets. We help them optimize whatever they're doing so that they can beat competition. And we help them defend their brand.
Great. And so I think a lot of people are wondering about how does AI fit into this? How does LLM search fit into all this? How is that changing? Google searches I'm sure your clients are worried about that. I hear a lot of conflicting data on that. There's the rumors that, ChatGPT will take over Google search, for example, but then I'm hearing on different podcasts that, actually Google search is up right now. So what are your just thoughts on how AI is affecting all this in your business?
No, absolutely. We serve Google and we serve ChatGPT platforms.
They allow that?
We're literally right in there. And so here's what we have found. Since last year, Google's really introducing AI overviews right on the page. It's right on the top of the page. So any brand that's on Google has seen wild swings in traffic. If you're not now on the top of the page on the AI response, your leads have dried up. You're under a lot of pressure. So you must understand what Google is showing on the top of the page. You must understand your brand. You must understand three things on Google AI overviews. One, are you visible? Number two, if yes, how? Number three, how are you portrayed? If your brand is terribly portrayed, people aren't going to buy from you. And so it's really important to understand that. Now, the second question you asked is, what's going to happen to ChatGPT? I believe the market share of ChatGPT has continued to expand. We like to source through ChatGPT and ChatGPT more so than other LLMs. I know others are also picking up. And I think I've heard a few points of view on this, right? I've heard that LLMs and search will live together. Like you could be using ChatGPT and LLMs as an assistant. So it serves a very different purpose, right? So some people argue that ChatGPT might really take market share over Google. That might be, but Google has 90% plus market share, and it has introduced AI mode. And so the future of search might be AI mode. We're closely tracking that ourselves. And one of the paradigms, it's, I think, too early to say right now. We'll really have to watch this closely. But the future might be you use Google search to discover. Because we like to be discovered. We like to explore as humans, right? Whereas we might use LLMs for summary. If we're busy, we don't like to go to 10 different URLs. We want pointed answers. But that could create a bias. And so sometimes we, as those who don't want biases, might want choices. And so I believe that both of them will have a space.
So interesting. You have so much data at your fingertips through your company. Are there trends or insights that the media that we're not even thinking about, but you're just starting to get glimpses of that we should be paying attention to?
So this might be well known or might not be, but I'll share. But what we found is what's visible on Google is changing, right? So traditionally, the way that you did search marketing is really changing. And the importance of social has dramatically increased. Like Reddit, the importance of Reddit has dramatically increased.
Nepal social on Reddit, that's a good thread.
You could be, and the other thing is it's interesting, like being able to get authentic content and authentic points of view is important because we know we're flooded with content. We don't know if that's authentic or not. And so the importance of social signals, and in B2B space, sites like G2 and Trustpilot, specifically G2 has really picked up. Then on B2C, you have other social sites. Again, coming back, I know that LLMs really pick Reddit and somewhat Quora. The importance of classic PR continues to rise. So being noted, for example, by the New York Times, or being noted by Cleveland Clinic, or let's say by the US government, because these are very credible sources. So what we've learned is the importance of being picked up by classic PR increases the importance, or rather, it directionally helps you be present on AI more so. So, and the why is I think it hopefully reduces the chances of the system gaming. So I think that's also something that we have really seen large brands.
Gaming like through bots, for example, or?
It could be through bots, by flooding with content. And over the last year or two, you're able to create massive amounts of AI-generated content. Content is becoming a commodity almost. I can use ChatGPT or anything and create thousands of articles. So I believe that's where the beauty of human curation and human insight comes in. That's where I believe that your core competitive advantage shines. You need to have your edge, right? So what's your point of view in the market? Sure, use these tools to automate, be fast, get ideas. ChatGPT is wonderful for getting ideas, but don't copy and paste. Maybe use multiple LLMs. Create your original point of view. And so I think it's kind of all of these things coming together.
That's a lot of great advice. And many in the audience are entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs. You gave some advice to generate PR through traditional sources to lend credibility to their content. Any other advice for these Nepali businesses?
I'll give an advice as an entrepreneur. I think entrepreneurship is a long game. It's fun, of course, and there's a lot of ups and downs, that you have to face through entrepreneurship. But you need to be in it for the long game, and you need to have an original point of view. I think the era of so many companies forming, it's so easy to create a company. If I think about the number of companies that are generated now versus the past, I'm sure it has grown by exponential nature. And so as an entrepreneur, what I'd say is try to find your unique niche and something you'd like to do, and try to wow clients. Because without clients, everything is abstract. You need to have sustainable client value. Don't try to have shortcuts on clients. I think without clients, nothing happens. The second part is, as an entrepreneur, this is something I believe, is you also need to take care of your team members. And third is, I think it's also important to be present in the community. For us, being present in Kathmandu and in the US is important. And I think all of these ingredients together, we like to say we have friends of the firm. And it's friends of the firm that could be friends, family, clients, well-wishers. It takes 1,000 people to raise there's an African proverb, right? It takes a village to raise a child. I think you need to create that community. That's really important. And the community could be anywhere, and it's really the power of the community that really will drive you forward. But in the essence, you have to take care of your customers. That's the one advice that I can't underemphasize.
Thank you. And so there's a lot of talk about what is Nepal's, how can Nepal outcompete the region? What is its USP perhaps? And a lot of people talk about data centers as well. Perhaps there's a lot of potential for data centers just given Nepal's unique geography. Do you see potential in data centers, or if not, like what else could give Nepal an edge business-wise?
I've been working for trying to build businesses in data in Nepal for 25 years. So what I will say is data businesses models have a very unique competitive, like any US business. I can talk about US business, okay? Any small to emerging business and those that have received private equity can do very well by having an operating center in Nepal. I believe Nepal has 3 core competencies. Number one, for US businesses, there's a time zone advantage. We sleep in Boston and then work starts in Kathmandu. We wake up in the morning and our work comes back to us. So you have a 24-hour time zone advantage. I think that's Nepal's one advantage, core competence. The second is talent advantage. I think talent is probably number one, which is I've been able to work with phenomenal people here over the years. And so as a growing business, you're dependent on talent. And so as an emerging business, by having an operation here and having the right culture, by attracting the right people, you can get really great talent. And I will say many colleagues here who work at global companies, and I'm sure many of us agree to that. The third is cost, right? So you do have a cost advantage by being in Nepal, but I would never come here for cost. I would come here for talent, number 2, time zone, and number 3 for cost. Right? Now, now to come back to your question, data centers, yes, I'm not an expert in data centers, so I'm going to make a comment in passing. But yes, data centers consume huge energy. And so given Nepal's climate and also the abundance of hydropower energy now, I think having data centers here by AWS and Google Cloud specifically, and Azure, DigitalOcean, specifically Azure, Google Cloud and AWS might find it beneficial to be in Nepal. There's got to be other things that are easier to come into Nepal, whether it's a massive amount of servers and resources and so on. So I haven't, again, gone down that path. What I will say is data-driven business models, data analytics, AI, I think that's a unique niche. And specifically, I know certain verticals that have done very well in Nepal. I know healthcare data is a niche that US insurance companies, US healthcare companies have done very well. We're trying to do the same in marketing. So anyone in digital marketing, anyone that excels in Google, spends a lot of time there, can benefit by having an office here. And number 3, I know even security is a space that I've seen, and maybe there's others. But I mean, I would say being narrow, not trying to be like a massive company, and trying to stay true to where you are is what I believe we should do.
Great, thank you. And I have one last question, then we can open it up to questions in the audience. Just, I'd love your perspective as a Nepali American, a part of the great diaspora. There's a lot of great Nepali American diaspora groups out there that are looking to come back and invest in Nepal and invest in their home. Just what is your sense of the diaspora community back in the US, and where do you see potential areas of collaboration? And that's an honest question, because us at the embassy, we're looking to foster those diaspora connections as well, especially in the commercial diplomacy space.
Sure, so you're right. I know many folks have traveled down these halls and gone to many schools and colleges and companies in the US. And so how can Nepali diaspora really benefit from the growth in Nepal is the way I will try to answer that question. So one, I have come across phenomenal Nepalis in many different sectors who now have become experts. And so one of the ways that Nepali diaspora can be involved is I'll give you an example. If you're in marketing, if you're in source marketing, we would love to collaborate with you. One of the things I want to do is I want to connect with world-class people. And so you might be working at an agency, you might be working at a brand, you might be an expert in Google or source market. I would love to connect with you because that connecting with world-class experts makes me a world-class expert. So coming back, you could be in healthcare, you could work with a healthcare company, you could be in AI. So the diaspora I think they could tremendously benefit by some of these interactions. You might even feel a sense of fun and gratitude to be able to contribute, train, and be part of the rising tide. So I think a narrow way is by just advising, connecting companies. And I know it's also on us. It has to be mutual. We have to be reaching out to Nepali diaspora in our space and trying to make it open. We have to invite them to offices. So that's one way. The second is, I know the opportunities for entrepreneurship are tremendous. So I am involved in GrowByData. My brother started a company called Clinic One, and it has outlets in 3 locations. And the thesis is to bring preventative healthcare to Nepal. And so I've worked in healthcare for a long time, and I really enjoy that. And what I've seen is from both businesses, this is a growing market, right? Anything that's in growth, whether it be AI, Nepal, or anything, it's messy. There's no experts. And so you have to enjoy the mess. You have to enjoy the beauty of creating where there's mess. And for the many people who like that, I think this is a green pasture. And then finally, those that are in investment, just as you're investing in emerging markets, there's risk, but there's huge upside. And so being able to bring in capital, expertise is important. And I believe it's also brand Nepal, right? So one of the ways that US businesses can benefit from Nepal, as well as the diaspora can benefit from Nepal, as well as we can benefit, is by promoting brand Nepal and really showing the goodness that's happening. And I know AmCham does a lot of work on this. I know the US Embassy does this. But I think it's all of these things together and being narrow and branding and engaging, experimenting, being open. That's what I believe we should be doing.
Embracing the creative process and the chaos that comes with that.
There's beauty in chaos.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.